Hello, how are y'all? So I'm Jasmine. You heard a little bit about my bio, but there are some other things that perhaps were not captured in the bio. Obviously, by my use of y'all, I'm Southern. So I grew up in South Carolina. I'm Gullah Geechee. My dad's side of the family is from Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. A big part, yes, Myrtle Beach, thank you. A big portion of this book is about that experience of growing up and going to Myrtle Beach and having that be sort of my home base and connecting with my culture through food, specifically seafood, and how coming from a fishing family gives me a unique perspective as a marine scientist and a marine conservationist. And really, this book is a Venn diagram of who I am. People are complex, and so is this book. So not only am I a scientist, I'm also a daughter, I'm also a granddaughter. I'm also part of this rich community of people who have lived with and relied on the ocean for a really long time, but have not been part of conservation conversations for a really long time. So this book sort of explores that sense of local ecological knowledge and its importance and what we choose to put value on in conservation, and how it's not always about academics or the letters that you have after your name. There's all sorts of things that we can learn from each other, from our ancestors, from communities that are really in close contact with the ocean. And I think that one of my favorite things about writing this book is that I got to sit down with elders in my family and elders in my community and talk about this and have an excuse to learn about the history, learn about all of these connections that we have to the ocean and to each other. And I got to explore that with my father and reconnect with my grandmother, who passed away when I was younger. And it's a really incredible thing to, in 2 generations, go from illiterate to writing a book. And that's something that I reflect on a lot as I was working on this book, that my grandmother had a 3rd grade education and I was writing a book. And so this is really about that story, that human connection to the ocean, and also helping people move from fear to fascination with sharks. There's a lot of fear around sharks. You know, we've seen Jaws. It's scary, you know, we've got all of these shark movies, but sharks are villainized in a way that I feel deeply connected to, and that's something that I also explore in this book, is how we as society villainize certain things, typically things that are not like us. And so it's really interesting to me whenever I started researching sharks to understand the parallels between how we talk about sharks and how Black people are talked about. Even in the point of during the Atlantic slave trade, the descriptions of Black slaves as having beady eyes, sharp teeth, it's exactly how we describe sharks, and I don't think that's a coincidence. And so I use sharks and the framing and villainizing of sharks to also talk about how we villainize Black people in America, and how the same emotional fears and biases that make you get out of the water when you see a shark is what makes some people cross to the other side of the street when I'm walking down the street. And me, just like sharks, I'm just living my life. I'm not thinking about you, I'm doing whatever I'm doing, but because all of these stories that exist out there tell us that sharks are evil and that they're out to get you, those are the same kinds of stories we hear in media in regards to Black people, that we're lazy, that we are thugs, that, you know, you have an issue that happens with someone who happens to be Black, and they find the most thugged out picture to put in the newspaper. Have we ever noticed that? Like, it's the most thugged out picture. And then someone can, like, I don't know, rape someone, and we get their, like, college graduation photo when they're not Black. So that's something that I really talk about in this book, is like, what if we think about who are villains and who do we choose to villainize and why do we do that? And why is a shark a villain and a dolphin a hero, even though they're like basically the exact same thing? Like same level of the food chain, they both have teeth, they both eat fish. Dolphins are incredibly smart and in some ways have a higher capacity for quote unquote evil. But sharks are fish and they're not like us. They have gills, they breathe underwater, that's suspicious, whatever. Dolphins breathe air, we trust them. Why do we do that? Why do we do that as a culture? And so this book is all about PR and like how do we get good PR for sharks? How do we get good PR for Black people and other people of color and women? And it also dives into my experience coming up in this field as a woman who is Black and what that looks like and sort of the trials and tribulations and challenges associated with that, and also the joys and all of the amazing things that myself and other people who have historically not been included in science, what we bring to the table. And it's also about, fun stories of sharks and catching sharks and having sharks being born right in front of you. And it's got all the elements of a good adventure story as well, where we're learning about sharks, interacting with them, tagging them. So the thing that I really wanted to do with this book is have it be this Venn diagram of overlapping memoir, science, social justice. And so this book kind of sits at the center of that. So you can pick it up and say, yeah, I want to read about this person who looks like me or comes from the same place as me or has similar experiences to me, and I want to learn how I navigate academia and navigate science as a woman or a person of color. But you also can pick up the book and say, well, I'm just really into sharks. And you also can pick up the book and say, I really want to talk about and learn about racial injustice. Or you could do all of those things simultaneously by accident. And so you might come for one piece of the book, but you accidentally get all of this other stuff. You accidentally get science. You accidentally get social justice. And that was really my goal with writing the book, is that everyone would have this experience and feel like, I'm going into this book for this, and I get that, but I also get so much more. I get to learn about how Jasmin grew up in South Carolina, and maybe I'm from South Carolina, or I'm from the South, or I'm Gullah Geechee, and I can connect with that. I am interested in science. I'm interested in conservation. I can connect with that. I'm interested in racial justice. I'm interested in the environment. It's an intersection of a lot of different interests, and it also explores and expands what you might have come into the book originally trying to get. So that's just a little bit about the book, and I'm really excited to be here to talk to y'all today. Thank you.